and welcome to the very special episode of Adjusted for Risk. I'm very excited to have Zephyr's own Trae Smith, who is an account executive at Zephyr, on as our guest. In addition to being an account executive, Trae is also the CEO and founder of PowerHaus Sports Agency. Trae is a former quarterback at UCLA and has an MBA from Pepperdine University. And as you can tell just from that introduction, this is going to be a very fun conversation. So you can tell why I'm very excited about this. So welcome, Trae, and thank you so much for joining the Adjusted for Risk podcast. For me, at times, it is really nice to take a break from talking all about financial markets every week, especially when the conversations aren't really so rosy when you're talking about equity performance, especially considering today's environment. So that is one of the many reasons why I'm very excited to have you on, Trae. We're going to discuss college athletics. Many of you know I love college sports, particularly college football. So that's one of the reasons why I invited Trae on, and glad he invited or accepted. So based on Trae's experience playing at a high-level athletic program and being a sports agent, he is a perfect person to discuss the evolving landscape of college athletics, particularly name, image, and likeness, or NIL. A few weeks back, I spoke briefly about NIL after Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher got in that little cat fight. I said, it's about time student athletes get compensated for their name, image, and likeness. However, it seems like particularly some of the big boosters, like what's going on in the University of Miami, are taking advantage of NIL and making it more about a pay-to-play program, which is really what I don't think, my interpretation, is not what it's meant to be. So enough from me. Let's bring the expert on, and Trae. So Trae, before we go any further, can you just give us a brief background of what NIL is and what really it's intended for?
Yes, well, Ryan, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited about today and this topic, as it's huge and constantly developing, and it's brand new. NIL has surpassed its 1-year anniversary, so as many are saying, this is like the wild, wild west. It's an unpaved path, and you can kind of set your own path here. So really, NIL, as you stated before, it stands for name, image, likeness, and that gives college athletes the opportunity to finally monetize off of their name, image, likeness, whether that be with paid social media posts, brand partnerships, car dealership opportunities, public guest appearances, autograph signings. It really is such an unpaved path that it's really up to the creativity of the agent and the athlete and the brand to really put together their forces and see what they can do to maximize an athlete's name, image, and likeness.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think maybe that's one of my biggest issues with this, is that it is so new. And Trae, what year did you graduate from UCLA?
2018.
So you missed this opportunity by 3 years? I see like guys like Reggie Bush and other players. We all know Reggie's story at USC and being a rival. You do too, but like all these other players, they're probably so upset that they're like too old that they didn't, weren't able to, participate in NIL, right? Or they're upset that NIL wasn't a few years before and they just missed it. But what else I think is interesting too, you being from UCLA and how this connects, is it was really the O'Bannon brothers, right? Charles and Ed O'Bannon, who both were UCLA grads basketball, who really put this, front and center. And their work, I think, years ago really were the ones that, stoked this flame and really brought it, and I don't know without them if we'd have NIL. You might be able to comment on that a little bit more.
Yes, I mean, we are very thankful for those two for pushing this initiative. NIL essentially is new formally, but this has been going on for decades. And the most premier athletes were the ones who were getting cars or getting gifted stipends to themselves and their families as well. But now with NIL being legal, it also gives athletes who maybe aren't necessarily superstars or Heisman contenders or future NBA draft picks. If an athlete has a great social media presence, has a lot of followers, knows how to engage with his online community, and has a great personal brand, those athletes who maybe necessarily aren't stars on the field can still see some action off the field with NIL.
Fantastic point. Once again, this is exactly what I was really excited to have you on. And I don't think I touched on it, but one of the issues I have on it is because it's new, there just seems to be a lack of leadership from the NCAA from up above in terms of what is NIL, what is accepted, what is not accepted. And it's just like you said at the very beginning, it's like the wild, wild west out there. And without true leadership from above, I think it's going to continue. Hopefully there is more clarity and leadership from the NCAA and it makes it easier. Another thing about your brand, you're talking about, somebody, a student athlete who might have a big social media following can benefit. And like you said, they're not maybe a Heisman candidate, but I always thought at the beginning it was potentially the female, the lady student athletes who could benefit, because I believe there was the twins down in Fresno State, the basketball players who had a lot of deals coming forward because of their social media presence, right? And their brand. So this isn't just about men's football or men's basketball, it's other, student athletes, like you said, who 5 years ago probably never thought they'd be able to get compensated for their brand, even though their name, image, and likeness is so valuable. So it's really great to see, I think, for, like you said, all these other athletes that, aren't on billboards and so on. So what are you hearing from fellow former student athletes like yourself or current student athletes on their views of NIL?
Yeah, so I mean, from the former student athletes, it's kind of like word for word, almost the common theme is, man, these guys are so lucky, right? And then with the current student athletes, it's, I want to get so much NIL and I need NIL. I want to connect with so many brands. That the current student athletes are so excited. As you mentioned, I have PowerHaus agency. We have 16 signed Division I athletes. I tell them, I know you guys are excited about NIL, but the reason why you sign with an agency is you focus on being the best student athlete you can be and allow the agency to take care of all the NIL for you. Because my fear when this NIL initiative first came out, it became legal, was that athletes would be more focused on having a photo shoot for an NIL brand partnership than staying in the weight room or watching more film or getting extra working on the field with their teammates. I tell the athletes, hey, I know you guys love NIL and you want to do brands, but let your agency focus on that and you guys really do the best you can on the field, because that really is what also helps the NIL, your performance on the field. That's kind of the difference between why a guy will partner with a local mom and pop sandwich store versus getting a Mercedes-Benz NIL deal. So the better you do on the field, the better NIL you get.
And that's interesting. I had the same concern. You look at some of these players, like, hate to bring up USC again, but like Caleb Williams, right? How does Caleb Williams, who there's reports of him getting like a $4 or $5 million NIL deal, huge sums of money. You've got to have a really strong locker room or a strong, strong leadership within the locker room because there's going to be guys on the other end of the spectrum that are very important, like special teamers that are not being compensated nearly as much as Caleb Williams, right? So how does that play a role within the locker room and team performance when one guy's making $4 million and another guy's really not making anything but working just as hard?
Right. I mean, we can really kind of compare this to like a corporation, for instance, right? Like if there's a superstar salesperson he's hitting his quota, he's getting large commissions, and then there's another sales rep maybe who's not getting those numbers, not hitting his quota. He's like, hey, why is so-and-so getting these large commission payments? It's like, well, he's putting in the work. He's going to get those results. That's why he has a commission. Same with these other big time athletes. Hey, why does Caleb William get the Beats by Dre deal for $2.3 million from Dr. Dre? Well, he's a starting quarterback. He's put in the work. He's going to help this team win, hopefully, a national championship or more games than we did last season. But at the end of the day, guys should not be looking at what their teammates have in terms of like, oh, why does he have this NIL? They should be asking themselves, what can I do to get better so I can get that same NIL? I tell the athletes, do not get envious of your teammates. If someone is getting more than you, you should be happy for them and know that your time is coming, because if you're on the same team as that athlete, that means if you guys keep doing well and you do your part as well, other brands will see that and then doors are open for you.
Perfect. And hopefully those quarterbacks who are getting the $3 million deals are paying for nice steak dinners for their offensive linemen down the road.
Yes, I mean, I really hope that it motivates the other athletes, right? Like they see, hey, my teammate got a crazy NIL deal. Wow, and I'm friends with him every day. We hang out all the time. I'm hanging around him. I'm getting better. I'm next up. Also, what some teams are doing, they have opened these new collectives for the teams. So there's some schools in the SEC now where the team will split the collective revenue that's raised with the entire team. So some athletes will see some type of NIL, some type of deals, but of course, those who produce more will receive more.
Yeah. I was just a couple of weeks ago, Ryan Day, the head coach of the Ohio State University.
Just trademark that.
I know, God, it's so stupid. Don't get me started, Trae. He said to some boosters, I believe, that they need $14 million a year to basically, put a competitive team out there. And you're talking about that collective, and that's where it comes from, some type of collective to compensate their players in order to, compete against the Alabamas and the teams of the SEC. So there's a lot really going on here. And I often say it's definitely not our parents' or grandparents' college football, and I shouldn't even say college football, college athletics, right? But like I said, I think it's long time overdue. Because student athletes put so much time into it. And I think, it goes to your point is I think it's so important for these student athletes to have a good support structure, whether it is family, friends who can handle some of this NIL deals, an agent, a financial advisor. And I'm going to bring into a financial advisor now. You talk as an account executive. And that's one thing I'm really excited. You're a subject matter expert because of your experience on the field as an agent, but also you talk to a lot of financial advisors, and a lot of financial advisors know 5 years ago, this wasn't a market for them. They couldn't really, unless maybe, student athlete had money from parents or something like that. Now, all of a sudden, a financial advisor can maybe, talk with these student athletes. Maybe it's a different avenue they can meet, or a different client base, different way of marketing to student athletes. So how does a financial advisor go about doing that? What are some steps? How do they build trust with the student athlete?
Right. Well, I think the first thing that a financial advisor should do is contact me and see what athletes we have here at PowerHaus agency that they can work with. But the biggest thing is, as a wealth advisor, this isn't a short-term game. What wealth advisors know, this is a long-term strategy. So really this helps the business because you get to work with the athlete at such a young age and really build that financial plan and live it and see it through. These athletes are not your traditional corporate American employee where go to a great school, graduate at 22, then work here at 65, cash out your 401k. These athletes, if they go to the NFL, are becoming millionaires and will retire by the age of 25 or 30. So what are they going to do from age 30 to 50? They can't just live off of the $3 million or $4 million they made in the NFL for 20 years. There's expenses, there's taxes, there's bills they have to pay, family members, tuition, things that come up. So wealth advisors can now work with the athletes and start using some of that NIL revenue and start investing it, building that financial plan, seeing what some investment vehicles would be best for them. So that way, when an athlete is 40 years old, he's not asking, hey, what's next? How am I going to pay for my house this year?
Mm-hmm. And years ago, when I first started in the industry, I worked with a financial advisor, and a lot of our clients were Major League Baseball players. And you are exactly right. The biggest issue, or our biggest obstacle, was and baseball players have a lot longer career in baseball than football, right? I think the average NFL player is 3 years. So
3.3.
you have to, as a financial advisor, really try and coach or help the athlete realize, you can't be spending you've got 3 years on average to make as much money as you can. Be smart with that money. Yes, you want to go buy a Lamborghini and all this, nice crib and all this stuff, but you got to be smart about it, right? And as a financial advisor, it's, that is one of the hardest parts, is rein in that, the spending habits or the spending wants of an athlete. And that starts now at 18 years old. And to me, I've always thought financial education, educating individuals in investing is so important, and it should start earlier. And I think that's a great opportunity for a financial advisor or an agent to get in with these 18-year-olds and educate them on investing in finance. So they know, so they're not, we don't hear these terrible stories when they're 25, they're filing for bankruptcy, even though they made $20 million, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, I've had some conversations with a few NFL players recently on the phone and talking about how the NFLPA will have seminars with big time wealth management firms come in and do seminars, teach financial literacy to the athletes. So it's not really due to a lack of knowledge or resources. I think there's an abundance of resources out there. The guys understand, hey, this is the stock market. If I invest, I can see a return. I think the athletes do comprehend that. I think we need to shift the approach from advisors educating athletes to just simply letting them know what's available. I think athletes, when we hear education and literacy, that might kind of turn them off a little bit. It doesn't sound fun. If a wealth advisor can make the investment philosophy approach fun and exciting, that'll really help athletes. These guys are playing high intensity sports. They want things to be fun. They don't just want to be in a classroom on a projector, going through slides, clicking on it. This is a stock. This is a bond. The guys are going to start snoring. So I think if we can actually show them how it works, maybe let the athlete get more collaborative in their investments, let them see what they're investing in, letting them see those returns, having those quarterly review meetings with them, that would be a lot better than just telling an athlete, hey, you should invest. It's like telling someone, hey, you should work out. They know they should, but kind of have to find a different approach to get someone to do what you're suggesting.
That's a great point. So we talked about, you mentioned that NFL Players Association, I believe others, NHL and Major League Baseball has something similar. Do you think there's anything like that for student athletes now, that now are potentially, a lot of them, they may not have grown up with much money. And now all of a sudden at 18, 19 years old, they've got this potential for an NIL deal, collectives. Do you know if there's much out there in terms of resources? I'm sure at the university, they might have some classes on investing, but again, an athlete, do they want to just sit there and learn about stocks and bonds? They might want to, need a different type of education. Is there much out there in terms of financial investment education for these type of athletes like you have for the NFL Players Association?
Right. So, I mean, it kind of goes back to what we talked about, there being an abundance of resources and knowledge. So athletes can go on Google if they want. The NFLPA is a little bit different because they have registered investment advisors with the NFLPA, whether that be Morgan Stanley, who will come in as an entity. Whereas for the university, cannot have a specific wealth advisor come in, because then it could be a conflict of interest, right? Like if I'm at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa, it would be difficult to have the Tuscaloosa Merrill Lynch wealth advisor come in, because then it could look like, oh, the university is feeding our athletes money specifically to this wealth advisor. So if it were to happen, it would have to be the entity themselves coming in and doing the presentation. But again, the athlete doesn't want to be on just the presentation snoring during the stock and bond difference. They would think the best approach would be to get the athletes in the office, show them what a plan looks like, and again, have them working with an agent, someone like myself. So the athlete trusts their agent. If the agent maybe suggests, hey, this is a great wealth manager, hey, here's 3 to 4, we can meet with them, whichever one you'd like. These are all great credits, guys. It's a little bit easier for them, that wealth advisor, to come in and try to work with that athlete.
Very good points. So you, and the conflict of interest, like you said, bring it, you can't just put a financial advisor out there. And I just want to make a comment. So do you think just in like financial education is boring and investment is boring, Trae?
I would say that the way that it's currently structured for athletes, it's not very effective right now, because we're still seeing athletes go bankrupt. There needs to be a new way of showing athletes the importance of not only wealth management, but of also real estate, doing philanthropy, entrepreneurship, getting on Shark Tank, becoming investors, not just simply stocks and bonds. We really need to change the stigma of, hey, just invest in the S&P. There's different ways and avenues for athletes to get invested. And that was one of the reasons why I started my sports agency, to kind of show those athletes those different avenues. Just given my experience in wealth management from the past 5 years, there's other ways for the guys to get involved. And I just think that side of investment is not really been exposed to athletes. It's been more the traditional conservative investments, but there needs to be a new way to do it. And I'm more than happy to change that for all the athletes and go around the nation and make NIL and investing fun.
Awesome. And another thing you brought up too is when all of a sudden an athlete is making $1 million, they don't realize that 50% of that's going to the government and taxes, right? So $1 million may seem like a lot. Well, it is a lot, but now all of a sudden after tax, it's $500,000, right? And if you're living a big lifestyle, $500,000 may not get you very far, right? So there is other things that I don't think is considered in tax management, like you said, philanthropy, or real estate. Thinking of those alternative investments that might be reduce your tax burden. It might be a longer term investment. It might not be as liquid, but at the end of the day, like you said, it might be better for the athlete than just having capital gains and stocks and bonds, like you said. Very good point. So again, those are, I think, fantastic points. If you're a financial advisor, things to consider. Going to a sports agent to help, maybe do a team type, a partnership to help manage everything. You also have, education and things to look for. So flipping the script here a little bit, as a student athlete, now all of a sudden a student athlete might be getting a lot of calls from financial advisors or other people trying to get them to sign up. So what should student athletes be on the alert for and consider? Some of them are 18 years old and there's going to be scam artists out there looking to benefit off of these young adults who are now wealthy. Is there anything a student athlete should look for?
Yeah, student athletes, should definitely always be cautious, whether that be financial advisors or sports agents or lawyers or someone wanting them to invest in their company. I think really my dad always tells me to use my discernment in qualifying a room. So really it's an athlete should kind of use common sense here. If someone reaches out to them, they should do their own research. Maybe go on the company's Instagram or that person's Instagram profile, Google them, see where they went to school, have a phone call. Kind of trust your gut feeling as well. But I would really encourage any student athlete who is a star right now or becoming one to really reach out to me at PowerHaus Agency. It's powerhouseagency.com, house spelled Haus, and talk to your family. And you don't need to sign that second. I tell all of our athletes who sign with us at PowerHaus, feel free to take as much time as you need to sign. If your parents need to talk with me, they're more than welcome to. So I think the athletes should not be in a rush to sign because the door is going to be open and people will be knocking on their door constantly. But really, to have trusted people in your network, having people that you can trust, and athletes should really leverage their family's expertise and anyone else who they know is a lawyer or something like that to look over things.
I think, Trae, that's a perfect spot to wrap it up. That was a great way of, bringing it all together. We talked about what NIL is, how financial advisors could potentially benefit from it, how they build trust within that, like you said, within that circle of people within the, student athlete, and how a firm like yours, how you can really help through this transition for a student athlete with so much going on. So they can really, like you said, PowerHaus can help them so they can just focus on the field, right? Put all their attention on making themselves a better student athlete. Right. So
there was one last thing that I wanted to mention was just that I know we're talking about the wealth management side, but there's an unnamed player on an NFL team here who purchased a house near the facilities. And the best thing, and I was so glad that he purchased the house instead of renting for his entire NFL career, because now that he owns that house, this goes back to he's going to retire like at 27, 28 years old. When he is 45 or 50, if he needs $400,000 or $500,000, he can sell that property, then have the capital from the sale of that house. So guys, I want them to understand that they don't just need to invest in stocks and bonds. They can also acquire real estate, hold on to it for decades. So when they need it, sell the house, you have proceeds from that, and you're taken care of. And that's one thing I just wanted to add in.
Yep, you're exactly right. There's a lot of different types of investments out there that help them diversify their wealth versus just putting in stocks and bonds. And diversification, I'm doing a research article about alternatives and diversification within a portfolio. And it's those different types of non-traditional alternatives that help your long-term goals, and you don't want to put all your money in one basket, right?
Right.
So with that, thank you so much, Trae. That was a lot of fun. And it's really so great to get insight from someone who not only was a student athlete, but is also in the field of helping current student athletes. So before we sign off, let's, you have any fun stories now? Whether it's, at UCLA or Pepperdine MBA, but remember, Trae, if it's regarding your college football, this is a family show. Keep it clean. Maybe someday I'll do a Adjusted for Risk after dark episode. But any fun stories or anything during your playing days or at UCLA you'd like to share? And if it includes ripping on USC, go ahead. We're all game for that.
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest moments, being a Bruin, playing against Texas A&M, we're down several touchdowns. It looked like the game was over. Fans were already leaving. They had us counted out. Just said the Bruins weren't good. They're soft. That's why they wore the blue and gold, and their mascot's a teddy bear. So they're ridiculing us, and came back and won, like minutes to go. And I'll never forget that game.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be a good experience. Okay, so a couple of things here. Number one, you say, that your colors, I personally think the Bruins uniform is the best, and the powder blue and the gold is the best in college sports. I think it's fantastic. So with that, I'm going to one of my stories, and this is, you might have been in a diaper, maybe not, with this story, but one of my favorite memories, or first memories really, of being a Wisconsin Badger fan, I'm really loving college sports, college football, was watching Brent Moss, Terrell Fletcher, and Darrell Bevel lead the Badgers over the Bruins in the 1994 Rose Bowl. Wisconsin was a terrible football program before that. Barry Alvarez came in a couple of years, they were playing in the Rose Bowl. And I just remember in small town Wisconsin, all of us piled into our buddy's basement. Don't tell anyone this because I think it was 17, but having some beers and celebrating, but that's in Wisconsin, you can get away with that. And beating the Bruins. So I hate to say that it was at the expense of UCLA, but it was a good time. And then again, Wisconsin beat UCLA in the 99 Rose Bowl with Ron Dane. So hate to say that, Trae, but at the expense of UCLA. But those are some of my first memories. But with that, anything else, Trae, before we sign off?
Yes, just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. It's been great. I'm really excited for this football season coming up and seeing what kind of new NIL deals are coming out this season.
Awesome. No, thank you, Trae, so much for joining. It was a fun conversation. I think as football season comes up back, maybe we should have another conversation about college football and college athletics. So I'm always willing to talk college athletics. So with that, thank you everybody for listening and joining. Again, you can catch our YouTube channel at Adjusted for Risk on YouTube, so you can watch the video there. You can also listen to the podcast on all your other podcast distributions, whether it's Spotify or others. And then don't forget to like and subscribe to the A Wealth of Insight from 6,237 feet. So with that, thank you all, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah,
thank you, Trae.
Thank you.